Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating one today. We're going behind the scenes of Amazon.
The one and only.
We're the most influential companies in the world.
If you're sure.
Yeah. So today we're digging into The Everything Store by Brad Stone.
Great book.
It's not just a biography of Jeff Bezos. It's really like this deep dive into the DNA of Amazon.
It is. It's like a business Bible in a way.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
we all use Amazon, but how many of us really know how it got started and how it got to be this massive global empire?
Right. Like from a garage to dominating the world practically.
Exactly. So Stone kicks things off with Bezos' childhood. And I have to say, this is a lot more interesting than I expected.
Yeah, it's not your typical trust fund kid story.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So his adoptive father, Miguel, fled Cuba during the revolution.
Wow.
And you can really see how that experience shaped his values, this whole idea of, resourcefulness and resilience.
You can see those values woven into the fabric of Amazon right from the start.
Totally. And then his mom, Jackie, she was like a total advocate for his education.
I read that story about how she convinced the school to let him into the gifted program early.
Yeah, she was like, my son's a genius, get him in there.
And they did.
They did. She was a force of nature.
But there's also this other interesting side to his upbringing, those summers he spent on his grandparents' ranch in Texas.
Oh, yeah. Those summers tinkering, learning to be self-reliant, fixing things, building things.
It's like the roots of Amazon's frugality and that do-it-yourself mentality were planted right there on that ranch.
It's fascinating how these early experiences really shape a leader, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the foundation, the early influences. But before we get to Amazon, the book takes us to Wall Street.
Of course, Wall Street.
So we find Bezos at this super secretive hedge fund, D.E. Shaw.
A lot of people don't realize that part of his story.
I know, I didn't. So he's surrounded by these brilliant minds. He's learning to analyze markets to spot those tiny inefficiencies.
And that's key, right? That's the lens he brings to the internet. Exactly. So while the rest of the world is trying to figure out email and email, Bezos sees this explosive growth of the internet. And he's like, okay, what's the business that's going to ride this wave?
And it hits him. Books.
Books.
Not because he was like a bookworm necessarily, but because he saw the potential for disruption.
Millions of titles, inefficient distribution.
Ripe for the picking.
Exactly. So he does what any sane person would do. Quits his cushy Wall Street job, packs his bags, moves to Seattle.
And starts Amazon.
Starts Amazon with a handful of people.
Classic startup story.
Picture this. They're working out of a garage, extension cords running everywhere because the computers are blowing fuses.
Talk about scrappy beginnings.
But even then, they have this laser focus on the customer experience.
Stone talks about how they would go on these team hikes, not just for team bonding, but to brainstorm ideas about how to better serve the customer.
It's amazing how dedicated they were to that idea right from the start.
It was a core part of their early success.
And pretty soon, they were facing down a Goliath Barnes & Noble.
The big kahuna of the book world. They were breathing down Amazon's neck, threatening to squash them.
They had the brand recognition, the stores, the resources.
But Bezos didn't flinch. He knew speed and innovation were his secret weapons.
And he was right. While Barnes & Noble was struggling to figure out the whole digital thing, Amazon kept growing at this crazy pace.
Adding more categories, expanding their warehouse network.
And get this, Bezos was actually learning from his rivals.
Oh, yeah.
He had these secret meetings with the CEOs of Walmart and Costco.
What? No way.
He's picking their brains about supply chains, customer loyalty programs, the power of everyday low prices.
It's amazing how he was always looking for an edge, always learning.
He took those lessons and incorporated them into Amazon's long-term strategy.
And then boom, the dot-com crash hits.
A gut punch for the entire internet industry.
Amazon's stock plummets. Everyone's writing them off.
But Bezos kept his cool.
He doubled down on efficiency, streamlined operations, and even introduced free shipping.
Free shipping? That was unheard of back then.
It was a game changer. He turned a crisis into an opportunity to refine their business model.
While other companies were crumbling, Amazon was getting stronger.
It shows you that they weren't just lucky. They adapted, they learned from their mistakes, and they were never content to just be an online bookstore.
Bezos always had his eye on the horizon.
Right. He was already thinking about what would come next after physical books, after DVDs.
And that leads us to the Kindle, the product that everyone thought was doomed to fail.
The Kindle. Yeah, I remember when that came out, people were like, why would I want a dedicated e-reader when I have a smartphone?
But Bezos saw the future. He knew digital reading was going to be huge.
And he was willing to put his money where his mouth was. He poured resources into developing the Kindle, even when some of his own executives were skeptical.
And that pricing strategy, selling bestsellers at a loss, that was a bold move.
It shook up the entire publishing industry.
Bezos was playing the long game, sacrificing short-term profits to get the Kindle into as many hands as possible.
And it worked. The Kindle became a massive hit, and now ebooks are everywhere.
It's another example of Amazon disrupting an industry.
So we've got Bezos, the relentless innovator, the shrewd businessman. But what about the culture he created at Amazon?
That's where things get really interesting. Stone paints a fascinating picture of Amazon's internal workings, but it's not always pretty.
Yeah, I've heard stories about the long hours, the demanding bosses.
It was intense, to say the least.
So what was it really like to work at Amazon under Bezos? We'll dig into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Get ready for a glimpse inside those massive fulfillment centers, the two-pizza team concept, and the secrets behind Amazon's incredible growth. Okay, so let's talk about those massive fulfillment centers.
Yeah, the engine rooms of Amazon's operation.
You can't really understand their dominance without getting a sense of how these things work.
I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about these warehouses, miles and miles of them, all working in sync to get those packages to our doorsteps in like 2 days.
It's a crazy operation, and Stone takes us behind the scenes in the book.
What's it like in there?
Well, in the early days, it was pretty chaotic, a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So Bezos knew he needed someone to whip them into shape.
Yeah.
And he brought in Jeff Wilk, a former Walmart executive.
Walmart? That seems like an odd choice for a tech company like Amazon.
Not really. Wilk was a master of logistics. He knew how to squeeze every ounce of efficiency out of a complex operation.
Okay, so he brought that Walmart know-how to Amazon.
He did, but it wasn't a simple copy-paste.
Right, Amazon's a different beast.
Exactly. He had to adapt to their fast-paced, tech-driven culture.
So what did he do?
Well, he introduced rigorous metrics, standardized processes. He even brought in time clocks.
Time clocks. I bet the early Amazon employees loved that.
Yeah, there was some pushback, but Wilk's focus on data, on continuous improvement, it really started to pay off.
Those fulfillment centers became well-oiled machines.
Yeah, even as Amazon expanded into new categories and offered more and more products.
Speaking of expansion, didn't Bezos have this whole flywheel concept?
Oh yeah, the famous flywheel. It was all about driving growth.
How did that work?
It was like this self-reinforcing cycle. More selection attracts more customers, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
More customers lead to higher sales volume. Higher volume gives Amazon leverage to negotiate lower prices with suppliers. And lower prices attract even more customers.
It's like this perpetual motion machine for growth.
Exactly.
Did that flywheel apply to other parts of Amazon's business?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Think about AWS, their cloud computing platform.
Right.
The more customers use AWS, the more data centers they need. That allows them to offer lower prices, which attracts even more customers.
Another flywheel in action.
Exactly.
It's brilliant.
So as Amazon got bigger, did Bezos just keep adding more and more layers of management?
Nope. He actually went in the opposite direction. He introduced this concept of two pizza teams.
Two pizza teams. Is that some kind of Silicon Valley diet plan?
No.
Yeah.
The idea was to break down the company into small, autonomous groups.
Small enough to be fed by two pizzas.
That's the idea.
Okay, so small teams, each with their own mission.
But how did he make sure they were all aligned, all working towards the same goal?
Each team had a specific metric. They were responsible for what Bezos called a fitness function.
Our fitness function.
Yeah, he believed in pushing decision-making down to the lowest level, empowering those small teams to innovate and experiment.
That sounds pretty cool in theory, but did it actually work?
It had its pros and cons. Stone talks about how it could lead to silos. You know, teams competing with each other instead of collaborating.
I think.
And sometimes those fitness functions became too narrow. You know, teams would optimize for a single metric at the expense of the bigger picture.
So not a perfect system.
Not at all. And it didn't work for every part of Amazon.
Right.
But overall, this two-pizza team concept, combined with Wilk's focus on operational excellence, it helped Amazon stay agile, even as they grew into this massive, complex organization.
Okay, so we've talked about the fulfillment centers, the two pizza teams, but we haven't really talked about free shipping.
Oh, right.
I mean, it seems so normal now, but back then, wasn't that a radical idea?
It was a total game changer. Back then, everyone charged for shipping.
Yeah, I remember those days.
But Bezos realized that customers hated it. They saw it as a barrier to buying online.
So he just decided to eat the cost. Wasn't that a risky move?
It was a huge gamble, potentially a big hit to their bottom line. But Bezos had this conviction that free shipping was the key to attracting and retaining customers.
And he was right. I mean, today we just expect free shipping.
And Amazon Prime, with its unlimited 2-day shipping, that took it to a whole other level.
It's amazing how they've made it such a core part of their business.
It's a huge competitive advantage, but Bezos's bold moves didn't stop there. He was already thinking about what would come after physical books, after DVDs.
That leads us to the Kindle, right?
Exactly, the product that everyone thought was doomed to fail.
The Kindle. Yeah, I remember when that came out, people were like, who needs a dedicated e-reader when you have a smartphone?
But Bezos had this vision of a future where digital books were the norm.
And he was willing to go all in on that vision.
He created Lab 126, this super secretive division in Silicon Valley, to develop the Kindle.
And they didn't just create a device, they built this whole ecosystem with the Kindle store, millions of digital titles.
And then he dropped that bombshell, the super low prices for ebooks, even bestsellers.
Yeah, I remember that publishers were not happy.
It was a power move. Publishers saw it as Amazon undercutting the industry, but Bezos saw it as making ebooks more accessible, accelerating the shift to digital reading.
And it worked.
Yeah.
The Kindle became a massive hit, and now ebooks are a major force in the publishing world.
It's another example of Amazon disrupting an industry.
But this relentless drive to innovate and expand it didn't come without a cost.
Right. Stone talks about the darker side of Amazon's culture, the long hours, the demanding bosses, the constant pressure to deliver results.
So what was it really like inside Amazon? Was it just this pressure cooker environment, all data and metrics?
It was definitely intense, but there's more to the story than that.
So was it all just about data and metrics? I mean, what was it like working at Amazon under Bezos?
Well, there was definitely a huge focus on data and accountability, but it wasn't just about the numbers.
Okay.
Stone really emphasizes how Bezos wanted to create this culture of high-velocity decision-making. You know, a place where people could move fast, take risks.
But wasn't he also known for being, well, pretty demanding, like those question mark emails we talked about? How did that fit in with this whole high-velocity thing?
Right. Those emails, they were kind of a symptom of his intense focus on the customer experience. Any issue at all that affected the customer, no matter how small it seemed, it was treated as like a 5-alarm fire. He expected everyone to be on top of their game, to have the answers, to be proactive.
So not just demanding for the sake of being demanding, it was all tied back to this customer obsession.
Exactly. Every decision, every single process had to be viewed through the lens of the customer experience. And he wasn't afraid to challenge people, you know, push them to think harder, come up with better solutions.
Makes sense. But Stone also talks about this question mark culture at Amazon. Was that like just a Bezos thing, or was it more widespread?
Oh, it definitely became part of the company's DNA. People were encouraged to challenge assumptions, ask tough questions, even if it meant, you know, questioning their boss.
Hold on. So it wasn't just Bezos sending out those question mark emails. Other people did it too.
Oh, yeah. It was seen as a way to ensure that decisions were, you know, well thought out, that every angle had been considered. Stone even mentions this thing about meetings at Amazon.
Okay.
Bezos, he banned PowerPoint presentations.
No PowerPoint.
No.
I mean, that's like the language of corporate America.
I know, right? But he insisted that everyone had to write out their ideas in narrative form, like a full story.
Interesting.
He believed it forced people to think more clearly, to really articulate their arguments.
Okay, yeah.
It was another way of pushing for high-quality decisions.
So it sounds like he was really trying to create a culture of intellectual rigor, even as the company, you know, grew bigger and more complex. But let's be honest, this whole relentless pursuit of growth, this intensity, it had a dark side too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Stone doesn't shy away from those more controversial parts of Amazon's story, you know, like those brutal price wars in the diaper market.
Oh, yeah.
They went head-to-head with diapers.com, slashing prices, even selling at a loss until, well, their competitor was forced to sell.
Wow, that's hardcore. Were there other examples of that kind of aggressive competition?
Stone talks about how Amazon often ignored those minimum advertised pricing policies, you know, the ones set by suppliers.
Okay.
They wanted to offer the lowest possible price to the customer, even if it meant undercutting other retailers and, you know, maybe damaging relationships with some of their suppliers.
I remember that whole controversy with Wusthof, the knife maker. They were furious with Amazon for undercutting their prices.
Yeah, that was a big one. Bezos saw it as, giving customers the best deal possible, but it creates some real tension. And then, of course, you can't talk about Amazon without mentioning that whole battle over sales tax.
Right, the tax avoidance controversy.
Yeah.
For years, they took advantage of these loopholes to avoid collecting sales tax in a lot of states, which gave them this big price advantage over, brick-and-mortar stores.
Yeah, and states were losing millions in tax revenue. Small businesses were complaining about unfair competition.
Which is a huge issue.
And Amazon, they fought back hard, lobbying politicians, even threatening to close warehouses in states that tried to force them to collect sales tax.
It's interesting, how Bezos, who talked so much about customer obsession, was also willing to, well, play hardball like that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it shows that, for all the innovation and customer focus, Amazon's also this incredibly powerful company, and they're not afraid to use that power.
That's for sure. It's a complex legacy. I mean, they've completely revolutionized e-commerce, cloud computing, even the publishing industry. They're constantly innovating, expanding, pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
But, their success hasn't come without some downsides.
It's a fascinating story, that's for sure. And Stone's book really does give you a peek behind the scenes of, one of the most influential companies in the world today. And it really does make you wonder, what's next for Amazon?
Exactly. I mean, they're already this dominant force, but they show no signs of slowing down.
Right.
What new industries will they disrupt? How will they continue to shape the way we live, the way we work, the way we shop? It's going to be really interesting to watch.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the world of Amazon, a company that started in a garage and now, well, touches just about every aspect of our lives.
From books to diapers, from cloud computing to, well, you name it. Amazon's story is really a story of relentless innovation, bold bets, and of course that laser focus on the customer.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration.
Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking those tough questions.